My name is Allison Beck, and I was 31 years old when I realized I had spent 3 years confusing emotional endurance with love. If you had asked me before that Tuesday night, I would have told you we were solid. Not perfect, but real. We met at a friend's barbecue. Nothing cinematic, just cheap beer, folding chairs, and laughter drifting through the yard as the sun went down. He was magnetic in a way that pulled people toward him without effort. I was quiet or observant, the kind of person who listens more than she speaks. He noticed me anyway, or at least that's what I believed. We started dating a month later. By the end of the first year, he had moved into my apartment. At the time, it felt like progression, commitment. What I didn't notice was how quickly we became me handling things and him enjoying them. He loved attention, loved being wanted, loved feeling missed. At parties, he'd drift away from me, working the room, laughing louder than anyone else, then circle back just to make sure I was watching. If I wasn't, he'd tease me for being distant. If I was, he'd accuse me of being clingy. I learned to walk that invisible line without ever knowing where it actually was. The comments started small. How I should loosen up, how I wasn't fun enough, how his friends didn't really know me because I never put myself out there. I told myself we balanced each other, that I grounded him, that love didn't need to be loud to be real. By the time that Tuesday arrived, the arguments had become routine. Not explosive, exhausting. I forgot his dry cleaning. I didn't react enthusiastically enough to a story I'd already heard 3 times. I spent too much time editing photos instead of sitting beside him while he scrolled through reality TV. Each disagreement carried the same unspoken verdict: I was failing some test I hadn't agreed to take. That night, he came home from drinks with his friends, already irritated. I had texted him once earlier, asking if he wanted me to save him dinner. He said no. Apparently, that was the wrong answer. "You don't even care where I am," he said, dropping his bag onto the couch like punctuation. "Or who I'm with." "I texted you," I replied, still looking at my laptop. "You said you were eating out." "1 text in 4 hours, Allison," he snapped. "That's nothing." "You were with your friends," I said calmly. "I was giving you space." He stepped directly in front of me, arms crossed, blocking the screen. "That's the problem. You give me too much space. You don't chase me. You don't make me feel wanted." I closed my laptop slowly and looked up at him. "What do you want me to do?" "Text you every 20 minutes while you're out." "I want you to miss me," he said, voice rising. "I want to feel like you can't stand being away from me." "I trust you," I said. I thought that mattered. He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You're always so perfectly fine. It's like I don't even register." There it was, the accusation I could never quite defend against being stable, being calm, being secure. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying. "You know what he said? I'm blocking you, on everything, until you learn to miss me more." I stared at him, something settling in my chest instead of breaking. "Good," I said. "That saves me time." His face flickered. Shock, anger, disbelief, before he dramatically blocked my number right in front of me and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. I sat there for a long moment listening to the echo fade. Then I opened my laptop again and started making lists. The first thing I noticed after he blocked me was how quiet the apartment felt. Not tense, not lonely, just still. The kind of quiet you only hear when you stop bracing for impact. I slept on the couch that night, not because I was afraid to go into the bedroom, but because I didn't want to. I didn't want to lie beside a closed door pretending everything would reset in the morning like it always had before. When I woke up, there were no messages waiting, no apology, no dramatic unblocking, followed by a half-hearted, "Are you calm now?" text. Just silence. His silence was supposed to make me anxious, make me spiral, make me chase. Instead, it gave me something I hadn't had in months: space to think without reacting. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the familiar clutter that had slowly stopped feeling like mine. His jacket slung over the chair, his gym bag in the corner, his unopened mail stacked neatly beside my laptop as if responsibility itself knew where it belonged. That was when it hit me, how much of my life had been quietly absorbing him, accommodating him, cushioning him, while mine shrank around the edges. I opened a notebook and started writing, not feelings, not grievances, just facts. The apartment lease was in my name, utilities too. He paid part of the rent sometimes when it crossed his mind, but if he forgot, I covered it without a word, because it was easier than arguing. The car we shared was mine, paid off long before he ever sat in the passenger seat and complained about my music. Most of the furniture was mine from before we met. Even the couch he liked to nap on had been delivered years before he entered my life and rearranged it to suit himself. Then there were the things I hadn't agreed to. Sometime last year, he had added my name as a co-signer on a credit card for emergencies, something I only discovered when a notification popped up about a balance I didn't recognize. He had listed me as a reference for a job he never got without asking. Signed us up for a timeshare presentation because we had to start thinking like a couple who plan things. He had even told his parents we were talking about getting engaged news that had reached me secondhand, wrapped in congratulatory smiles I hadn't earned. At the time, I brushed it off. I told myself he was enthusiastic, forward-thinking, maybe a little impulsive. What I didn't admit was that each step forward had been taken with my name, my credit, my stability, never his. By Wednesday morning, the silence still hadn't broken. That was when I realized something unsettling. If he hadn't blocked me, I probably wouldn't have noticed how much control he thought he had. Blocking me was supposed to remind me of my place. Instead, it removed his ability to interrupt my decisions. I called the credit card company first. 40 minutes on hold, one supervisor, and a very calm explanation later, my name was removed as co-signer. The balance made my stomach tighten nearly $4,000 in 6 months. Charges for nights out I hadn't attended, clothes I'd never seen him wear, convenience masquerading as entitlement. The representative apologized. I thanked her. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger I had postponed for too long. Next came the timeshare company. They were less polite, insisting I'd agreed to something I had never signed. I told them evenly that I would pursue legal action if my forged consent was used against me. The tone shifted immediately. The agreement disappeared. One by one, I changed everything. Bank passwords, email, streaming services, subscriptions I hadn't realized he was logged into from devices I didn't recognize. Each reset felt like pulling a thread loose, watching a knot unravel without resistance. By Thursday, I called my landlord and gave notice. I told him I'd be moving out at the end of the month. He paused longer than expected, then said almost too quickly that he understood. I suspected he did. He'd dealt with my boyfriend's complaints about neighbors' demands for upgrades, irritation, over rules he'd never read. When I told him I'd already found another place across town, smaller, quieter mine, he wished me luck with a relief he didn't try to hide. Friday, I took a personal day and began packing. I moved through the apartment methodically, room by room, like someone preparing for a controlled burn. I packed my books, my clothes, my photography equipment, the kitchen tools I'd collected piece by piece over years. I left his things untouched. Not out of kindness, out of clarity. I wasn't erasing him, I was extracting myself. The longer I worked, the clearer it became that this wasn't impulsive. This wasn't punishment. This was overdue maintenance on a life I had let someone else clutter. He was still blocked, still silent. Somewhere out there, he probably thought he was winning. By the time the sun went down, my car was full, my apartment half empty, and my chest felt strangely light. For the first time since we'd moved in together, I wasn't waiting for him to come home and decide what the night would feel like. Silence, I realized, wasn't emptiness. It was leverage. By the time he decided he was done teaching me a lesson, I was already gone. Saturday morning started like any other weekend, used to sunlight through the blinds, the low hum of the city waking up, but I wasn't waiting for him to stumble out of the bedroom or check his phone for the exact moment he would unblock me and expect everything to reset. Instead, I was standing in my new apartment, coffee cooling on the counter, directing 2 movers as they carried the last of my things inside. They didn't ask questions. They never do. To them, it was just another job, half an apartment's worth of boxes, a couch, a bookshelf, framed photographs wrapped carefully in blankets. Efficient, professional, detached. I tipped them well. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed for the first time in days. 17 missed messages, all at once. I didn't open them immediately. I already knew the arc. The first would be light casual, pretending nothing serious had happened. The next would test my silence. The last would punish it. He always followed the same pattern. When I finally looked, I was right. Hey, I think we've both had enough space now. Are you okay? This isn't like you. Seriously, answer me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You don't care at all. I locked my phone and slid it into my pocket. Back at the old apartment, he would still think he had time. He would assume I was sulking somewhere nearby, waiting to be allowed back into the conversation. He didn't know that by the time he reached for his keys, there would be nothing left to argue over. Sunday morning, my phone rang. I answered this time. Where are you? He said immediately. No hello, I replied. Impressive. Where are you? He repeated sharper now. I came home last night and half the apartment is empty. Where's the TV? Where's the bookshelf? Where's... He stopped. I could hear him walking from room to room counting absence. Where's all your stuff? Silence stretched between us, heavy and unfamiliar. What the hell does that mean? He finally demanded. It means I took my things and left, I said calmly. The lease ends in 3 weeks. You'll need to figure out where you're going. You're breaking up with me. His voice jumped an octave. Over a stupid fight. You blocked me and told me I needed to miss you more, I said. And I did. His breath hitched. You can't just leave. We live together. We have plans. What plans? I asked. We were going to my sister's wedding next month. We were talking about getting a dog. You were talking? I interrupted. I was listening. There's a difference. He started crying then. Not loudly, not openly, the careful kind. The kind meant to activate guilt, to make you feel like you'd failed a test of compassion. I'd responded to it so many times before without realizing it was another form of control. I can't believe you're doing this, he said. After everything. After everything, I repeated, steady now. After you put my name on a credit card without asking. After you told your parents we were engaged when we never discussed marriage. After 3 years of making me feel like I was constantly falling short. The crying stopped abruptly. You went through my stuff, he said, accusation replacing hurt. I went through my financial records, I replied, and found your mess. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I'm not doing this anymore, I said. Lose my number. I hung up before he could respond. Then I blocked him everywhere, phone, email, social media, every door he'd once used to pull me back in. That night, sitting among half-unpacked boxes in my new place, I felt something unfamiliar settle over me. Relief. The quiet didn't last. At first, it came in soft taps, messages from people who hadn't spoken to me in months, framed as concern but edged with curiosity. Hey, are you okay? He seems really upset. What happened between you two? I kept my replies short and neutral. We broke up. I moved out. I wish him well. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I didn't correct the version of events I could already feel spreading without me. He filled the silence the way he always did with a story that cast him as blindsided and me as cruel. 3 days after the move, a message arrived from one of his closest friends. You really just disappeared on him. That's cold. I read it twice, then put my phone down. There was no version of my truth that would survive being filtered through loyalty and outrage. I wasn't interested in auditioning for understanding. Then his sister reached out. I don't know what happened, she wrote, but he's telling everyone you abandoned him. He's staying with our parents. He says he can't afford rent anywhere and doesn't know what he did wrong. I didn't respond. I felt the familiar pull to explain, to soften the narrative, to take responsibility for how uncomfortable the truth made other people feel. I let it pass. What I didn't expect was the reappearance of his ex-girlfriend. I heard about her through someone else first, how she'd been seen with him listening intently, nodding sympathetically. How she'd said things like, he always gives too much, and some people just don't know how to appreciate consistency. It was subtle, calculated, and perfectly aligned with the version of me he was selling. The woman who had once warned me about his need for control was now validating it, so long as it wasn't pointed at her. The pressure escalated a week later. A message from his cousin arrived late one evening, more hesitant than accusatory. I don't usually get involved, he wrote, but I'm concerned. He's saying you stole from him when you left. He's talking about filing a police report. I don't think that's true, but I wanted you to know. That crossed a line. I called him immediately. He sounded uncomfortable, caught between loyalty and reason. He says you took the TV, a gaming console, some furniture, and jewelry that belonged to him, he said. I told him it sounded extreme, but he's really wound up. The TV is mine, I said. I have the receipt. The console is mine. The furniture is mine, except what I left behind. And I never touched any jewelry. There was a pause, then a sigh. Yeah, that's what I thought. He's escalating because I'm not responding, I said. If he files anything, I have documentation for everything. Good, he replied quietly. Stay safe. After the call, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I finally understood the scope of what I had walked away from. This wasn't heartbreak. This was reputation management. Control rebranded as victimhood. Silence reframed as cruelty. I spent the night compiling proof. Photos of my apartment from before he moved in, receipts for electronics and furniture, Screenshots of messages from early in our relationship where he praised my place, joked about how lucky he was to land a woman who had her life together. I organized everything into folders labeled and time-stamped my calm, sharpening into something resolute. By morning, I drafted one final email from a new address he couldn't block. Subject: final communication. I have been informed you are considering filing a false police report. I have documentation proving ownership of everything I removed from the apartment. If you proceed with false claims, I will pursue legal action for defamation and harassment. This is the only warning you will receive. Do not contact me or anyone in my life again. I attached the evidence and sent it without hesitation. 2 days passed. No police report, no apology. Just a final message sent through his sister's phone. I just wanted you to miss me. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone and setting it face down on the table. Some truths don't need replies. 19 days after I moved out, an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. Are you even thinking about me? I didn't answer right away. I stood in the middle of my new living room, instead taking in how different it felt from the place I'd left behind. There were no half-finished projects scattered across surfaces I'd just cleaned, no noise bleeding in from someone else's moods. The walls held only what I chose to hang. The air felt lighter, like it hadn't learned how to brace yet. I walked through the apartment slowly, deliberately, as if I were documenting a crime scene that no longer existed. The empty space where clutter used to pile up. The kitchen without expired food I never bought. The bedroom with only my things arranged the way I liked them, untouched by compromise. I took one photo, then I sent it. No caption, no explanation. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. He was typing, erasing, typing again. I watched it like someone observing a storm through glass, aware of the violence safely removed from it. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't him. Hey, is this number still good? This is Michael. We met at that gallery opening last year. I'm texting because your ex just showed up at my place asking if I'd seen you. She said you two were on a break and she wanted to surprise you. It felt off, so I wanted to check if everything was okay. My stomach dropped. I typed back quickly. We broke up. She doesn't know where I live now, and I want to keep it that way. Got it, he replied. She's pretty upset. She showed me the photo you sent and said you're playing mind games. That's my new place, I wrote. She's blocked. Thanks for the heads up. No problem. She's asking a lot of questions about you. Thought you should know. I sat down hard on the couch, the reality of it settling in. The story he'd been telling had evolved. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about reclaiming access by any means necessary, showing up unannounced, reframing boundaries as cruelty, painting persistence as romance. I turned my phone off and left it that way for the rest of the night. For the first time, fear brushed close, but it didn't root. I had done everything right. I had documentation. I had witnesses. I had distance. What he had was desperation. And desperation makes noise. Stop! Part 6. Quiet after the storm. The fallout came in waves, then tapered off into ripples. Mutual friends reached out cautiously at first, then less often. Some apologized outright. Others admitted they'd been told a very different version of events and were starting to see the cracks. I accepted the apologies without relishing them. Vindication wasn't satisfying. It was just sad how predictable the pattern became once I stepped outside it. I heard through the network that he'd moved back in with his parents 2 hours away, that the credit card debt caught up with him and he'd taken a second job, that his sister's wedding came and went with him, telling everyone I'd be there, then spending most of the night explaining my absence, that the woman he'd started seeing was already being accused of not trying hard enough, not missing him enough, not proving her affection on demand. I stopped checking for updates. My life, on the other hand, settled into something quieter and sturdier. Work, the gym, long walks with my camera capturing the city in pieces that didn't demand anything from me. Cooking meals because I wanted to, not because someone else expected them. Hanging my photographs exactly where I wanted them. I started seeing someone new casually, not because I needed to replace anything, but because it felt easy. There were no tests. No performances, no sudden disappearances designed to provoke reaction. We enjoyed each other's company without keeping score. I realized how unfamiliar that kind of calm had once felt, and how natural it was now. Sometimes my phone buzzed and my chest tightened reflexively, a muscle memory I hadn't yet unlearned. But it was never him. No random numbers, no messengers, no echoes. That chapter closed cleanly. I still have the photo, the empty apartment, saved on my phone. Not out of bitterness, but as a reminder. A reminder that manipulation only works if you keep playing. That silence when chosen can be an act of self-respect. That leaving doesn't have to be loud to be final. He wanted me to miss him. Instead, I missed the chaos.